Here I am.
That's not your Pentecostal.
I know, I couldn't find it.
Welcome
Stoles yesterday,
to the day after Sunday.
Pentecost stole, baptism stoles.
The Spirit is moving and Mitchell is rolling.
Holy roller.
If you missed worship yesterday, then this makes no sense to you. But
well, probably the most of the podcast won't. Let's be honest.
So go back, pause the podcast, go back, watch worship yesterday. Welcome, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil Dickey with Reverend Mitchell Boone and Rebecca Garrett Pace. We are here on the day after Sunday, and we're glad that you're joining us this morning. Yesterday was Pentecost Sunday, and on Pentecost, we celebrate all kinds of fun things in the church. And this Sunday, specifically, this Pentecost Sunday, we've got to celebrate our graduates as well. Hey, Mitchell, what else will we celebrate other than Pentecost?
Graduate Sunday.
There we go.
There you go. Got it this time.
We had a lot of fun with the opening of worship yesterday.
I mean, some of us did. Some of us named Rebecca and Dexter were kind of stressed, but
little anxious, wheels off. As Dexter said.
The others of us were having fun.
I was having
so
fun.
You were having fun, Phil. I know. But yeah, so Mitchell, we decided like literally 40 seconds before we went live that Mitchell should wear his Pentecost stole, which is beautiful. He got it on Etsy. It has like these origami like cranes embroidered on it. Mm-hmm. And he went out of the room and Dexter was like, all right, 30 seconds. All right, 20 seconds. And Mitchell came in. I think you sat down when Dexter was counting down at about 7 or 6.
That's true. And I would have been able to pull it off. It would have been fine, except I didn't turn on my battery pack for my...
Right.
You just sounded like Scooby-Doo.
Just then?
And I could have pulled it off had it not been for you kids.
Yeah, it was like... It felt like y'all were shaming me for not wearing red, like not wearing green on St. Patrick's Day.
It didn't feel like it. We were.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Phil was.
I for sure was.
Well, that's silly because Phil has to have whatever excuse he can come up with to wear a St. Louis Cardinals shirt on camera. So
that's pretty accurate.
But yes, we did it. It got a little wheels off. I think we did a great job of putting the thing back on the track. So
yeah.
Yeah, it was a great Sunday.
Yeah.
It was good. And so we had to cancel the 8:30 service, which is where we were going to honor the graduates live, but we also honored the graduates in 1050 with videos, which I thought was really cool, because we got to see, high school, college, and grad school, including, Phil, your friend from Italy, Naomi, and it was so great. I mean, it was just great to see all their faces, and it's been one of the hardest years, I imagine, to go to school in. So, yeah, it was just really fun to be able to do that. And then Mitchell brought it all together at the end of your sermon when you said, maybe we're wheels off because we have a little bit of senioritis. So I liked that. I like that tie. I don't know if you were planning to do that or if that was just like in the moment.
I was planning on it, and then Dexter also made the comment offline about in the beginning of the service feeling like we had a bit of senioritis, which is probably true because we are kind of graduating in a way from our online degree, going in person on inside in-person worship on June 13th. And so I think there's some excitement there, but I wasn't always a particularly great student. I was a good student, but I wasn't like a great student. But yeah, senior year of college, I did just enough to get by, for sure.
Especially like spring semester was so terrible.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was so lovely outside, and I would just go sit outside all the time. I don't want to be inside studying.
I did not. I mean, even if my personality were not my personality, I was not afforded that because music majors didn't have time to have senioritis. We were pushing right to the end. We were getting all of our core classes in. We were student teaching. We had to do senior recitals. I don't even think I realized I'd graduated until 2 weeks after I'd actually graduated because I was so stressed getting everything done.
Still work after you graduated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so for the religion department at Hendrix College. We had our capstone class in the fall, actually. So it was a bunch of electives and, hanging out.
What was your capstone class?
So we had to do like, it was like a thesis class.
Yeah.
So I wrote mine on the intersection between nonviolence in Christian history and a new Buddhist movement that was happening in Tibet at the time. Yeah.
I think mine was on the philosophies of religion. That was our capstone, and I think my paper was on something like Marcius Iliad and the notion of the sacred and the profane. God, we are nerds. It's good.
We haven't even said happy birthday to Phil. My mom did though, so happy birthday, Phil.
Hey, thanks, y'all.
Today's your birthday?
It's a big day. Not really. It's
Aw.
raining outside. No, it's all good. It's lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Diane.
Yeah.
How old are
happy
you,
birthday.
Trent, Phil? How old are you now?
Y'all, I'm like the old person on staff, with the exception of Keith, obviously, which we all love Keith. But
Very old.
it's weird that I'm like the old person on staff. I'm 37 today.
Wow, you got a happy birthday from the North Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church.
That's amazing. And I'm the favorite nerd of the entire conference, apparently. I take that as a huge compliment.
That is a huge compliment. Yeah.
Love it.
Well, actually, that's a great segue because Mitchell, you said that Pentecost we kind of think of as the birthday of the church. And I think it's right that you challenge this notion of like Pentecost just being a birthday like we think of it, with cake and candles and celebration, and it's fun. But something that I thought of was, instead of birthday, maybe think of Pentecost as the birthing day, like something new is being born, and it's, you know, messy and chaotic and everything. And so that was something that I just kind of thought of when you were saying that, is like Pentecost is something that's sort of hit or miss in different churches I've been at. Some people really know what you're talking about, and some people are like, I don't know what Pentecost is. I can keep up with you with Easter. I'm starting to learn what Lent is, but Pentecost, I totally lose it. And so I think it's very unknown in some church circles.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are even Methodist churches that, you know, don't necessarily elevate Pentecost to the level that I think it deserves. And it's interesting because it's really the last, it's kind of the last hurrah before we hit summer. Like, this is really the last high church Sunday, holy day in our liturgical calendar until we get to World Communion Sunday.
Yeah, typically.
Like, I'm trying to think like what's I'm trying to think like when we have another Sunday like Pentecost, and we really, it's going to be a while. And so there's some energy, I think, that is just the way our calendars fall, right? I think there's some energy that can be capitalized when churches lean into it. But you're right. The challenge is not to see it as simply a celebration of how the church began, but also how this birthing of the church is a ongoing process over and over again. And it should be a little wheels off, and it should be colorful. You had some stuff planned that would have helped bring this into a more tangible, tactile reality for us, because you're going to have streamers and handbells were going to be ringing on the back parking lot. And so we kind of missed some of what we normally do when we're together in person. But we tried to make up for it with the beginning of worship.
Yeah, and Diane, you're exactly right. Today is also Aldersgate Day, which is special really only to Methodists. But it's when we talk about like John Wesley's heart being strangely warmed, which is what we always say, like that was his experience of the Holy Spirit kind of transforming his movement, his Methodist movement. But yeah, I mean, I was going to have streamer and bells. And, you know, my mom said something that was really neat. When I told her, I was like, yeah, we had to cancel the early service. I'm so disappointed. We put so much work into it. And she said, well, just remember that the work is the offering too. And so I say this to anybody who was going to be involved in worship at the 8:30 service. We were, you know, AJ was going to play flute. We had the handbells, all that. Like, your work to prepare for it was your offering to God in it. And God does not mind that we had to cancel the actual service, because we already were praising him or her through our preparation, you know?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I don't know, like in the opening of my prayer, I talked about, our diligence in preparation, because so much of, if you've been following the devotional study we're doing from Jack Levison, the 40 Days with the Holy Spirit, he talks about this idea of preparation and getting ready. And again, like the disciples were all in an upper room on the Shavuot festival. And so they had probably been up all night studying when this takes place. Right. And so we have this experience, we've had this 4-week experience leading up to Pentecost Sunday. And you're right. Like, even though we didn't get to celebrate it in the way you had kind of planned and hoped and anticipated, that there's still something really holy about the preparation thereof.
Yeah. Yeah. So something that I thought of too, Mitchell, during your sermon was when you were talking about the birthday of the church. I thought about this. It's been a meme for a while now. It might not even be cool anymore. Probably not, because I'm behind the times. But it's the whole like side by side pictures of how it started and how it's going.
Not the dog eating the pizza. Not that meme. The other one.
Okay, we don't even have to talk about that, Phil. That was ridiculous yesterday. But like how the church started versus how the church is going, and I say that with a little bit of a giggle, just because I think we may have lost a little bit of the Holy Spirit fire, but we potentially have not lost the drunken ridiculousness every once in a while.
Totally, especially this pandemic here, right?
Right.
Oh. Yeah, I like this idea of the church kind of being unrecognizable to us now. Like, if you think about it, like there was nothing that was set in stone when the church was born, right? So this is all new. And in fact, when the early church tried to set things in stone based off of previous experiences of God, it seemed to be the Holy Spirit rebuffing them at every turn. I'm thinking about Peter's dream, right? And the kind of anxious living that they were all doing and trying to keep the Gentiles kind of at arm's length. And it seems that the Holy Spirit is constantly moving to make the church more inclusive in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really sad is that sometimes that's like unrecognizable to us now. Like, It is threatening and disorienting to think of the Holy Spirit as, functioning in that way. And I also, I could have used a lot of different examples yesterday. I chose to use a personal one because I thought it was fair from the congregation to hear me talk about the audible voice of God that I've heard in my life. But one of them is, you could easily use our own church as an example of how the Holy Spirit moves. And what I'm most curious about is how we'll recapture some of this when we come back on June 13th. What will we do, and how will we listen and pay attention to where the Holy Spirit is moving is left to be seen. But I'm excited about that, and hopefully we can recapture some of the early church energy in terms of like nothing's prescribed, everything's available to us, and we can kind of rethink and discern what's next for us in this post-pandemic world.
Would you say, Mitchell, that we are going to reimagine and have a sermon series on coming back?
I
see what you did there.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I can say that with great certainty that we will reimagine, and we will also remember. Mm-hmm. We will re-engage, mm-hmm. and we will
rejoice.
So, that new series is going to be fun. Starting on June 13th. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In-person side. Yeah, I have to clarify that because we've been in person, but it's really in person inside.
Yep.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Yep. I'm looking forward to that series a whole lot. And I love this notion that we ended with for this past series of the Holy Spirit as a catalyst. Because I do think you're right. Like the other 3 weeks we've examined different facets of the Holy Spirit. And this is probably the most colorful, unpredictable, right? And so my like nerdy science self, I was researching like catalysts in chemistry and chemical reactions. And so the notion of a catalyst in a chemical reaction is that it sparks the reaction, but it itself is not changed. So it can spark the reaction between two elements, but it itself is not broken down or changed by those two elements. And so I think that's a really neat concept if we want to kind of marry this notion of science with religion, is that the Holy Spirit moves in and around us and sparks and catalyzes new chemical reactions for us. Yeah. And yet it itself is not dependent on, is not changed by our reaction or our inaction. It just kind of keeps this dance going. It keeps this chemical reaction going. I just love that.
I think it's really a great point. And it does get into the kind of like, well, I don't want to get too process here.
Do it.
But like this idea of God, does God change or evolve over time? I tend to like see that and experience that, but that's all on God's time. And so I think the Holy Spirit can take several different forms of a catalyzing agent, right? Like it doesn't have to look the same in my life as it does in other people's lives. So what I love about that analogy, Rebecca, or that metaphor, is this idea that it doesn't mean that God won't use other ways to create this spark, but that God is not dependent on the other elements involved to create the spark, which is totally true, right? Like there is nothing unique about the disciples being kind of gathered together in one place. It wasn't the only time that had happened. That wasn't, that's not an uncommon thing. And so it's really great when we think of the Holy Spirit as this kind of catalyst that's going to look different though, and like in our lives and in our churches.
I think just to shift, because Dexter, could you put Monica's question on the screen? I really like this, and Phil, I would love to hear your take on this. She says, digital church is here to stay. Can you say a little bit more about reimagining community without being physically together?
Yeah, I love the question, Monica. It actually is solidifying. So I really debated for the next 2 weeks what I was going to do with the Sunday sit down, because it might be our last 2 Sunday sit downs, at least in the current format we have. And I kind of thought, like, what if we just spent some time talking about this digital space and digital church? And so this might be solidifying my direction on that. So, yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. I sure hope it's not going anywhere, because if it is, then I think all this, not that it's been for naught, but we've learned a lot in the last year and a half. And, there's been some of us who've been pushing for this for a while, but one thing that I keep telling people is that this confirmed for us that it's not just that relationships can exist online. Like they can begin online, they can be grown online, they can enhance on. I mean, like relationships that happen in person, like it can happen online too. And I've said this over and over again, but to me, discipleship is a relationship. And so to exclude the online presence and the online format of church takes that away. And so we have incredible opportunity to really expand. And like you just said, Rebecca, like we had Naomi, who's in Sicily, like join us almost every Sunday. And now we get to celebrate her graduation. And like, she's a part of our community, she's a part of who we are as White Rock. And the same is true for my mom in Missouri and your mom in North Carolina, right? Like, and we have people spread kind of all over the place. So I think that if we're not reimagining the church through the lens of a digital space, then we're leaving a huge part of what's emerging both generationally. Gen Z are the first digital natives. So if we're not engaging them in their native space, then like, again, the church kind of becomes irrelevant. And to tie into what Andrew asked, so Pfizer's question of what is the Holy Spirit threatening now? I think it's threatening the established understanding of what church has been, and not threatening in a bad way, right? I don't think we're going to get rid of churches, but we do know that churches continue to close and physical buildings continue to close. But I don't think that means that people are becoming less spiritual or inclined to gather in religious spaces. Those spaces are just changing from always being in physical to often being in digital spaces.
Yeah, I think I would maybe push us to think about not simply the threatening language, but also like refining language. So in Luke Acts, we see fire as not just destructive, but refining. And so reinventing, recreating. So yeah, I mean, I think we're at a pivotal point. I've talked with a lot of people I agree with this. I feel this too. It feels like in some ways we are emotionally back where we were this time last May, because we're again on the precipice of something brand new. We finally got our feet under us and we did several months of digital only. And now we're looking at like, we used to be in person only, basically. We had a presence on social media and we did,
we put up a camera on a tripod.
Right.
An iPhone.
And by camera, you mean Neil's iPhone. Yes.
It's I think an iPhone 6, maybe, is that right? Or not?
7. It was an iPhone 7.
7. Okay.
That half the time would not orient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You had to watch worship like this. But yeah, I mean, I think like we're staring down yet another seam in between two seasons of our church life. We were basically only in person, then we were basically only online, and now we're like, how do we integrate this? And it's a refining of like, how do we include people in organic ways, right? And we're back to chemistry, right? How do we spark these catalytic reactions online that feel authentic and genuine, as well as caring for the people who are now finally back in person after 62 weeks, right?
Yeah. God, 62 weeks. That's crazy.
Isn't that what you said, Mitchell, in your video?
It'll be 65 weeks on June 13th.
Okay.
Yeah, 65 weeks. And so I think to the second part of Pfizer's question, who is being centered or included? That's the like awesome thing about digital space. It is really hard to gatekeep. And that's scary because you have people saying things that are normally not said in person, one-on-one, or in group settings. All of a sudden worship has a whole running commentary next to it. And that's different and hard for the preacher to wrap, my head around. The people may be actually commenting while I'm preaching, but I cannot see said comments. Is just a really fascinating thing. Yeah. But what I love about digital spaces is if internet can be accessible, then it becomes a great equalizer amongst diverse communities, especially marginalized folks or outsiders of the church. The church has not paid attention to, and historically, and two, if the church begins to pay attention to them, there's a potential for accessibility in ways that there's never been before. Hence why we had someone in our graduate video from Italy. Right.
Here's what I love about this too, and going back to the text too, is that you have the Pentecost of Acts chapter 2 that's with primarily this Jewish audience, right? Like this Jewish people who had been together in the festival, studying together. And then what is it, chapter 6 or I think it's chapter 10? You have the like Pentecost story essentially repeated for the Gentiles too, right? And so you almost have this sense of, here we've had this digital space so locked for our kind of community at the church, at whatever our church is, and like we should have the expectation that it's going to flourish way beyond just the people who have been a part of our own community, right? That the Spirit will move in the bits and the bytes, as we've said many times throughout the year, the pandemic year, to spread far and wide and be moving, and already is moving, right? And that there's going to be this fire-like movement that sweeps through and shows no reservation and shows no partiality, but like is for the Gentiles just like it is for the Jews, metaphorically speaking.
Really good. Yeah. But the Holy Spirit's not a metaphor. Right.
The Holy Spirit is not a metaphor.
Right.
The Gentile Jew thing was the metaphors. Yeah, I think Monica and Andrew, those are really good questions. Like those are the questions that.
And I think on their face they look different, but I think they're very similar. Mm-hmm. Or they have the potential to I think merge really well as we think about digital space, which we've thought about for a year, and we have to now think about what it's like to be back in person too, because we had a memorial on Saturday, and no one was, right? It was fine. No one was masked.
It was outside too.
It was outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time I had seen, hugged, shook hands with, been in the same physical space as so many of our church members. And it was a really awesome and also strange experience.
Yeah.
Really,
it was literally the first time I'd seen a lot of people in person, right? Like these people that I've spent almost every Sunday with for Sunday school, for, I don't know, 40 weeks or something like that, 30 weeks.
Yep.
And now they weren't just in this little box on Zoom, right? They were actually people walking and talking. And we both like had these moments of like, you're real people, Like,
and I think when digital ministry is done well, that's what it does, right? I mean, it allows this crossover, this bridging. On Wednesday night, we recorded our Handball Choir and our Chancel Choir, just so we'd have some stuff like in the backlog through the summer.
Yeah.
Because even though we're going to be back indoors, it is probably going to be a little while longer before we're comfortable, and the science says is that it's safe to have like an entire choir on the stage or something like that. But I witnessed a really cool reaction between two of our choir members who had really not ever spent much time together in person. They were like, "Oh, you're I'm here. This is cool. Like, I know you because we've shared Zoom choirs for, a whole year, but it's so great to see you in person." And so I think that's the point, is when we do both well, then it allows this blooming of a relationship in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're about to wrap up, but I know did you just catch a fly out of midair, Phil?
No, I missed it.
Okay. Good grief. If you're just listening, I'm sure you're very confused, but if you're watching the video, then you just saw Phil like freak out and reach out into the middle of, yeah. Okay. So before we leave, we do want to share with you, like, we're moving into the summer. We're going to be in a lot of transitions. And so we've decided to wrap up, kind of treat this as today as like the wrap up of our season of the Day After Sunday podcasts. Phil, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of just analyzing what this podcast is going forward. And, the talking about worship from yesterday is very specific typically to people who worshiped with us yesterday. And so it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just we want to make sure that we're capitalizing, and does it make sense to talk about something different while we're here in live on space like this. So we're going to do a little bit of time kind of strategizing what our podcast ideas are going forward. And so we're going to try some new opportunities as well, and new platforms, get a new intro outro eventually made as well, right? That kind of stuff. And if you follow me on social media, I'm going to be doing some stuff on a new platform called Fireside Chat. So I'll be putting some links out for that. You can come join. Sooner or later, I'm going to get Mitchell in there to come join me as well, and we'll host one together. But there's just some cool opportunities coming up. So this will be back, but we're going to take a little bit of a break just for now.
Yeah, and I think it's just really important that our energy be really focused on what we're trying to accomplish over the next couple weeks. So, but yeah, it's been, however and whatever our podcast looks like moving forward. Yeah, I'm really proud of this podcast for essentially going every week for like 2 years,
which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, there's been some really great conversations that have taken place here. And I think those conversations will continue in whatever that form that looks like. But we're going to kind of reevaluate now.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Good thing. Dexter's wanting to have a montage.
Can you throw that song up, Dexter?
The best of the Day After Sunday moments.
It does feel very graduation-esque, right? Like,
we all grown up now.
Yeah, that's right.
But
we all thanks for spending Monday mornings
sadly,
with
what,
us.
Rebecca?
I was going to say, sadly, we do not have the budget that Allen High School had. I went to their graduation on Friday, and we cannot, sadly, provide you with a fireworks and laser show to end our season of Day After Sunday. But just know that our hearts are sending you fireworks and lasers as we take.
If we really loved the Holy Spirit, we would have had fireworks and lasers in worship yesterday.
Yeah, laser arts. That's my next job expansion. Not
you
just
go.
music anymore, folks.
I'm into laser arts. Actually, my grandfather was into lasers.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I like it.
Well, think about what a laser is, and then my grandfather had those
Okay.
in his garage.
Did he cut
We
things with
put
them?
on laser shows for his grandkids.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
It was wild. It was wild.
Love it.
But don't think too hard, Phil.
Too many
All
thoughts.
right. Until we meet again.
Until we meet again, my friends. Thanks, everybody. We're glad that you've
Take
been with
care.
us.